Hi there, and welcome to this episode of Psych Attack. I'm Dr. Jaz MacDonald. In this episode, I have a new format for you. Today, I'm joined by 3 guests instead of 1. Rather than taking a deep dive on a single area of psychology, research, or practice, we're going to discuss the Australian TV drama series Cider Vinegar, released on Netflix in 2025. The focus of the series is Belle Gibson, a social media wellness influencer. In the series, Belle posts publicly about her experience of brain cancer and promotes alternative approaches to treatment to her millions of Instagram followers and through a recipe app that was promoted by Apple called the Whole Pantry. The primary conflict of the series being that Belle never had brain cancer. So each of us here brings a lens to our viewing of the series, informed by our own life experiences and professional expertise. We're going to take turns highlighting an issue within the series and leading a group discussion. We're aiming for a kind and dynamic conversation, hoping to draw your attention to some new ideas. We're also really keen to see where our perceptions and experiences kind of overlap and to also see how we might think about things differently. So we'll start by giving a little bit of an intro to ourselves, just really briefly. So my area of expertise is in trauma exposure and reactions, as well as mental health. I have a PhD in psychology, and I am a trained social worker with experience in mental health assessment. And mostly I spend my time doing this podcast and working at an Australian research institute in the areas of trauma and mental health. I might throw to Erica next.
Thanks, Jaz. Hi. Thanks for having me. My background is psychology and public health, and also complementary medicine. So I also practiced as a herbalist. So in the context of this discussion, that sort of gives you a little bit of insight into my background. I left my academic position at the University of Technology, Sydney, earlier this year, and I'm now a professional coach, ADHD coach and career and leadership coach. But my broad area of focus in terms of my research is health and wellbeing, specifically looking at health care decision-making, both patients and or the public and practitioners. And so more recently, I've been focusing on the new area that I've gone into, so neurodivergence and ADHD. So that's very briefly me.
Thanks, Erica. I might throw to Suzie.
Hey, Jaz. My area is in a slightly different area. I have a PhD in literature and philosophy, and my expertise is analysing aesthetic forms, including television shows. I currently work at Charles Sturt University, and I'm really looking forward to this panel.
Lovely to have you, Suzie. And Donna.
Okay, well, I'm from a really different area to the other two as well. So it's really interesting, the different people you've put together, Jasmine. So I'm a sociologist at Charles Sturt University, and my area is gender. So I look at the world through that gender and feminist studies lens. So I'll be coming to an analysis of the program from that perspective, which might be a little bit different. And I'm really interested in the social, the cultural, the problem that we tend to look at women differently to how we look at men in society. And really looking forward to the discussion. Thanks for having me.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm really excited to have the 3 of you here. And I think that my sense is there's a bit of overlap, but there's also a lot of difference in the levels of kind of analysis and the way that we've been thinking about the show. So that's kind of exciting as well, especially for myself being very kind of individualistic and thinking at that psych level, and then starting to tap you folks on the shoulder and see how you're broadening perspectives and thinking about this more at meso macro level things was really exciting for me. Folks at home, before we dive into any further discussion, we just have a couple of points that we want to make. So The first one that's worth mentioning is no one in this panel has real-world kind of connection to the events that are covered in the TV series, the people portrayed in that TV series, or to the production of the TV series as a whole. And we also want you to keep in mind that the series covers a few sensitive issues. And so the conversation that we have today is likely to tap into some sensitive issues. So please be kind to yourself and keep in mind that we will be talking about cancer and terminal illness. We'll be talking a bit about very likely family and domestic violence, and also about mental health. I was going to throw to you, Suzie.
Yeah, look, I mean, I have to say the obvious, but sometimes the obvious is really important. And that's the fact that none of us personally know the protagonist or antagonist of the series, which is Belle Gibson. And sure, my last name is Gibson, and I'm in no way related. So there is no conflict of interest. So there's no way we can actually undertake an assessment of character based on the person. We're dealing with the character as depicted in the series. So there is a gap, and I think there needs to be recognition of that. And on that note, people might think, well, why are you analysing a text when it's not the real world? Well, the thing is, texts are the interface between us and the world. That's how we negotiate the world often. I mean, we do it through language to begin with, the language we're currently using. And language is a form of text too. So there's always a mediatory factor between us and the real world. And looking at aesthetic forms like this television series, it often reveals things about us, the way we respond, the way we interpret. It actually blows back on us too. So it's a very revealing sort of activity in all sorts of ways. It reveals individual character, it reveals cultural values, social values, potential sexism, all those sorts of things. So it's always fascinating to look at texts because they tend to reveal us as much as we reveal them.
It's a nice point. Erica?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to highlight that we are going to be talking about healthcare decision making, and sometimes that can, I guess, bring up a lot of conflict with people around making judgments about people's healthcare choices. And I just wanted to be clear that we're discussing some issues that might be raised by the series. We're not making any kind of judgment about the kind of health decisions that people make. They're very personal. And we certainly won't be dismissive or diminish the type of health choices that people make. So just sort of giving everyone that context, we're trying to make this a safe space.
Alrighty, folks. Let's dive in. I'm going to go first because I'm going to lead by example and take the privilege of first position. But mostly what I note is it's much more individual than as I flagged. The thing that popped out to me that I wanted to focus on was much more individual. So I thought, if we get that out of the road, then we can zoom out and think about some more kind of interconnected, broader things. I want to talk about the parasocial relationships that come out in this TV series. This idea of parasocial relationships is something that's been on my radar for maybe about 12 months, and the show exemplified it really well. Could I get just a read in the room? Is this something that you're like, yep, really familiar with this, or is this kind of new for folks in the room?
I wouldn't mind you just sort of elaborating and why the parasocial relationships in this particular series fascinate you.
Absolutely. Parasocial relationships are a phenomenon that's been studied since about the 1950s, and it pops up in a really interesting way in this series. But I want to give a little bit of context first before we bring it to how Belle and Miller's relationship is set up within the show. So it was a phenomenon that was set up or kind of explored in the 1950s when it comes to traditional media like anchors in TV news and also in radio. And it's basically started as a media, as a marketing and communications phenomenon. It's the idea if like we actually do in podcasting, if I'm looking into the camera, if I'm talking to the audience, if I can give them the perception that they're in mind and I'm speaking to them, that it leads an audience to feel engaged, and to start developing what's called parasocial relationships. So I don't know if you're familiar with like the parody Anchorman, but he has that phrase at the end of every time he closes a show. It's like, "Stay classy, San Diego." Like he's talking directly to the audience, and that it like builds this trust with him. So people tune in when there's high competition between personalities and presenters. Then we want to build a little bit of that connection with the audience. And it started to lead more and more to the marketing teams behind various productions to say, you should give a little bit more information about you personally. You should tell the story, but then you should have a personal remark about it. So starting to build an audience perception of authenticity and trust. And ultimately, it's really leading to, or in this kind of original setting in terms of marketing, is having purchase intent. The more I know this person, the more I identify with them, I kind of trust them. And so I'll become a loyal viewer. So all these little interactions, they're called parasocial interactions. When I say listeners at home, or when Ron Burgundy says, "Stay classy, San Diego," those build up over time. The presenter is sending a one-to-many message to all of the audience, but the intention is for the person at home to start to perceive a one-to-one connection. And a parasocial relationship is when these interactions build up and the audience member starts to have a unilateral, so it's one way, but a sense of a dynamic social and psychological connection with the presenter. So we see this in talkback radio. That idea of having people call in, having a limited interaction, but feeling connected to the show. So things like, long-time listener, first-time caller. We see it, like I mentioned, on podcasts. But it's, really, really relevant when it comes to social media influencers. And the way that they show that in this show is where we're kind of led to think that Belle and Miller have an established relationship. And we see a lot of their interaction where Belle is commenting on Miller's posts online, liking things, like referring to her as babes the whole time, setting up this like connection between the two of them. And then partway through the series, when Belle meets Miller for the first time face to face, the audience is kind of surprised. You might have seen it coming. I'll leave that to you folks and what your reaction was. But that interesting setup of actually this whole time where Belle has been following and admiring and feeling connected to Miller, but the whole time Miller doesn't really know who Belle is. And social media is kind of really influential in this way, in that, or different from traditional media, because there is this perceived interaction where I could have a parasocial relationship with someone on social media and they might like my comments, they might repost them. All of that is going to build up my sense of relationship and connection to them. But ultimately, I have more of a connection to them than they have to me. There's a little bit of a rant to get us started. Thoughts so far? I've got plenty of other things.
I mean, what you're saying there, I mean, it's also built on a large fantasy, isn't it? It's the fantasy connection. And when you think that it was tied in with advertising and it's about building a rapport, I mean, we all know that this is obviously fake. And I just got the feeling that Belle was playing the game, like she was repeating and she was imitating that kind of rapport. She sort of adopted similar behaviours to become the individual that others have fantasy identifications with. So to me, it was a two-sided thing. Like she kind of knew what the other was doing and she responded in kind, and then she imitated to the point that she outstripped the mentor and became the dominant party who had the following. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. Anyway, I just thought I'd jump in there. I don't know what anyone else thought.
Well, that's the social media problem, isn't it? The great problem of social media is that it is about a connection that we often don't know if it's real or if it's not. We don't know who we're talking to when we're on social media. Could be somebody who's adopted the profile, or it could be your friend. And you could be talking to somebody young and sexy and exciting who's presenting themselves like that and who's appearing to you like that in your mind's eye, and that could be anybody. So
Exactly. Like there's a lot of stuff you can get away with when it's mediated online. You know, you have your online personality, and then there is the offline that a lot of people obviously don't have access to. So there's a lot of room for manipulation.
I was just thinking about what that means in terms of building trust. So, and I guess this is, I'm thinking about it in the context of the kind of health decisions that people are making and the trust that they have in these wellness influencers. And that kind of parasocial relationship is very key to that trust. And trust is a very strong driver, one of the strongest drivers in how people make decisions about their healthcare. So it can be very dangerous if it's used in the wrong way.
I mean, I also think what's forgotten, I mean, and this is with social media or with legacy media, you're dealing with the telescoping. Like when you're dealing with the camera takes an image of something, but not what's beyond that, not what's outside the parameters of the camera. And social media influencers know that all too well. So they have little fragments of their life that look fantastic in building up this fantasy image of themselves, so that you fall in love with them and you fall in love with the idea that they've beat cancer by eating healthy and they look amazing. And you, again, it's feeding into dreams and desires and emotions that drive what we really want all the time. So it is an emotive sort of drive constantly, which is why people often want to believe it, because they want to live their fantasy. Everyone does. That's sadly what it comes down to. And people do exploit that. And clearly in the case of Belle Gibson, she was very, very clever. But also clever to the point that she believed her fantasy too, which also takes it to another level. Like she sort of knew it wasn't true, but she also didn't want to believe it wasn't true either. So there's this battle with truth that's constantly going on.
And the context of social media and influencing is that and I'll say where, because 51% of people in population studies have at least one parasocial relationship. So, of course, what we're seeing with Belle, from the way that the show is framed around her mental health and fantasy and all these things, this example is particularly negative. But broadly speaking, it's not a negative phenomenon. 51% of people have at least one parasocial relationship. And in social media, it's this kind of muddying, like all the things that Susie's saying, and on top of that, muddying, well, I can connect with people that I really do have real world relationships with in the same platform that I can connect with people that I don't personally know in the same kind of ways and have access to them. And we know through research on parasocial relationships that influencers use different platforms to kind of drip feed information about themselves. How realistic it is questionable. But with Belle and a range of other influencers, there's this perception of, this is one of my peers. This is someone who's gone through what I'm going through, or what a person I care about is going through. And I think we'll touch on this later, so I won't go into detail about, where people want to get trusted information. But I will say that the research on parasocial relationships says they don't develop between a person and someone talking on a topic that the person who forms the parasocial relationship wasn't already interested in. They're going out to seek that community. They're going out to look for, where have they been maybe marginalized. There's a bunch of research that shows how important parasocial relationships have been for different marginalized groups, where you're not seeing in your own community folks who look like you, folks who have had experiences that you've had. And so it can be really protective. Like, there's a lot of research that shows it builds social support in the absence of real world support, which I think we'll probably talk a bit about as well, where Belle wasn't getting the social support from her networks that she might have otherwise gotten.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jaz. And I think, and just like, I'm conscious that I made that comment before about it, those wellness influences, it being potentially dangerous, that level of trust that people can have. And that really comes from the type of message that the influencer's giving around health. And I guess an example of that is looking at the type of treatment that Miller chose to have, and sort of touching on what you talked about too, Suzie, emotion being involved in a lot of that as well. And I think when people enter into these relationships, they're going into it in good faith that the people that they're engaging with are giving them, good advice, and they can trust that person, and that's where the danger is. Yeah.
I agree with that. I'm not kind of convinced that an influencer is somebody that we should ever connect with and ever listen to, because I think there is something about them where they are in it to become popular and to make money from social media platforms. And if they're not a healthcare professional and they haven't done some training, but they're actually coming from their own personal experience and they are attempting to achieve popularity with people who look at their apps so that they can make money, I can't see how they could become anything other than deceptive and problematic. So whilst I think, yes, social media could be used to unite people and connect people, particularly people who are struggling. They might be in rural areas, or they might be from a different nationality, or there might be somebody coming out. They need to be connecting with real people who are experiencing the same thing, not an influencer who's trying to make money using social media.
Yeah, there's an agenda there, isn't there, Donna? Yeah.
Which makes us unsafe. Their agenda makes us unsafe, and it's something we should know more about. But people seem to take it on face value, like, oh, look, here's this really nice person who's saying these things to me.
I agree. I think that healthy skepticism or distrust of influencers is a good thing. I think it's pretty tricky to know where to draw that line of when identifying when it is, the intention is to earn income or to influence. I think we're very nicely kind of starting to unpack or could be shifting onto some other points. So I just wanted to highlight, I think, a couple of things that are interesting from the parasocial relationship, external to influencers. And one is, broadly, the spaces where people start to form parasocial relationships tend to be around beauty and wellness, and most often influencers, gamers, actors, singers, and athletes. And interestingly, it don't have to be human. There can be animal influencers or animal profiles on social media that folks really get a sense that they start to know this animal and are connected with this animal. But also fictional characters. So research has pretty consistently shown that folks will develop parasocial relationships with characters that they connect with, that they have a sense of social connection, and that it makes them feel, I guess, seen. And the kinds of questions in surveys, if we're trying to assess whether someone has developed a parasocial relationship, is, true or false, or how likely we agree with things like, occasionally I wonder if X is similar to me or not. For me, X could be the perfect partner. If I knew X in real life, I'd trust them completely. So obviously that's really concerning with the things the group has raised here, right? And if I knew X in real life, I could disclose positive thoughts about myself honestly and fully to them. And so there's a continuum we're talking about here. But I mean, I'm not going to ask you to necessarily disclose, but I know that there's fictional characters or folks who I've thought, I get a real sense that I know them and I just trust them and want to buy that product. I've been a bit of an Apple product fangirl for about 15 years, and I can put that down to Johnny Ive, the head of design. Apple led the way in having the designer of the company do ads where he spoke about what he was passionate about and the technology behind that, and they're all up close shots. He's very charming, very good looking man talking about product development. And I fully bought into that. This is a boutique product. This is something that they really care about. It's artisanal. Of course, we know now that's not the case. Or if we know the show Parks and Rec, Ben, who ends up with Leslie, I would be friends with Ben. I know I have a parasocial relationship. I see this character and I think, Ben would be a great friend. I would have a drink with him. So, of course, not all people develop these, but I found this. I've always found this a really interesting topic, and was interesting to see that come out for better or worse in this show.
Who's Ben again?
Ben is the guy who ends up managing the city and marrying. Oh, spoiler alert! But it's been out for a long time. He marries Leslie Knope. Yeah,
right. So it's a TV. It's a series.
Yeah, Parks and Recreation. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So I do want to kind of finish out that part before we move on by saying if you're interested in this kind of topic and also thinking about when that relationship breaks down, because that's ultimately what's happened here, right? Belle had deceived and broken a relationship and a trust with a lot of people who cared a lot about her and the things that she was talking about. The light-hearted version of that is this book. There's a chapter in here that's called "This Sandwich is Morally Problematic, but it's also delicious. Can I still eat it?" That's actually by the writer of Parks and Rec and various other TV shows. And what happens when you have a fandom or an interest in someone who ends up morally letting you down. For a much more serious deep dive that I think is pretty important at the moment is this one. Claire Dederer, Monsters, What We Do with Great Art by Bad People. There's a whole chapter on fandom and about the commercialization of your fandom to buy a product. And I picked this book up because I wanted to know how to have conversations and think about artists who I had previously valued who, through the Me Too movement, turned out to be folks that I no longer wanted to be interested in or enjoy their art anymore. So thank you, team.
Yeah. When you were talking, I was thinking about that actually, like how we deal with, because I think an author that I really like, Neil Gaiman, has just been accused of transgressions, sexual transgressions. Do I keep reading Neil Gaiman books? I'm in the middle of one. And my decision has been, yes, I will keep reading it. Just like I keep listening to Beethoven and just like, because what I think is if you delve into the lives of people over time, there is a lot not to like about a composer, an author, a musician. Many musicians have behaved appallingly in their lives, but can be particular types of moralities in different subcultures that make the decision, well, now this person we will, and I think they call it cancel now, don't they? We will cancel this person, this person. Yeah, I think I have come to disagree with that.
It can be a very dangerous line, I think, because ultimately what you're doing is that you're conflating the person and their problematic morality with what they produce, which might have actually nothing much to do with them in a way. I mean, they just, what happened to the death of the author, Roland Barthes, in the 1960s? I like to think we can make these separations because if we're constantly holding the person to account, if they're an artist, we don't necessarily demand that art has to be always moral. because sometimes the problematic morality of art is what makes it good. Because if we constantly just go for a pure morality, it can be very, very sort of fascist, actually, in those clear-cut alignments and quite purist. But anyway, we're probably moving on a different...
We are, but I just want to make this point that, you know, back in time, to be a gay or lesbian person meant that people weren't going to listen to your music or read your books. So the morality of the time was cancelling those people. Do we want the morality of our time to cancel anybody? And I think, you know, dealing with what they may have done is different to cancelling what they produce, as you say. But we probably are shifting tangents, Jasmine.
Well, I don't think so. I think we can shift out of a deep dive on that, but I think it links probably to some of what each of you are interested in talking about, which is the different standards that might be put on women. So Deirdre in that book talks about mostly about men, and the chapter that she has on women is as compared to men who are considered genius, like Hemingway or Picasso, can get away with bullshit behavior and worse because of their genius. That makes them a monster. What makes women monsters? It's when they don't take care of their kids, you know? And I think there's a little bit in this series that links to that as well. What makes Belle bad? You know, is she there? Is she a good partner? Is she there for her son? But also, is the app and the advice she's giving, is it completely undermined by the fact that she herself didn't have cancer? Is there not any good wellness advice in what she was putting forward?
I thought that too. Like if you had enjoyed her recipes, then her recipes are possibly still okay. The issue about publishing the book was that, you know, the recipes are still yummy and easy to prepare and healthy. So and I wondered that about her myself. Why did she need to have cancer in order to produce these recipes, that app, that book?
I think in a way, when we talked about marketing and the parasocial, it's about finding an audience. So she needed to actually have an audience, and to gain that audience momentum. And sadly, she did prey upon a very vulnerable audience, you know, people who had cancer on serious health matters, which is medically seriously problematic and ethically, obviously, as well. But she knew that was her audience. And then she had admirers that came with that on top of it. Well, she triumphed over cancer. She cured herself. She became her own doctor. So it's the backstory. Like, we love backstories because backstories make something more genuine, even though, you know, it's providing, she provided a false origin story. And we embrace origin stories all the time. Like, there's so many films about the origins of this witch. She's actually had a hard life, blah, blah, blah. Everyone identifies with her and she becomes a hero. So she was very, very clever. I mean, she's very adept, and in a different world, in a different sort of background, she might have been a successful CEO of a company without having that lie of a backstory.
Absolutely. If her mental health had been stable and she had had the support that she needed from family and community and perhaps from the school, she would have been an entrepreneur. She needed some sort of direction to say, well, actually, take the lying bit out. Let's just create the empire. Let's build this empire. Like, you're good at this. This is fantastic. But she felt as though she needed to have the illness in order to get any support at all, which does very much come from her background. And I think it is perhaps my sociological and feminist perspective that got really annoyed by the outrage about her her deceit of people, and that they were only looking at her wrongdoing and they weren't looking at that background. This was somebody who grew up with no family support. And I wonder what the school was thinking at different times during that story. Nobody seemed to intervene. There didn't seem to be community support. So she had no backing. Now, people who have no community and no family, we know statistically, will not do well in the world. The fact that she got as far as she did was really commendable.
Yeah, but she also was in a pattern of realizing that because of the lack of background support, she realized early in her, I hate to say this, I'm talking to her as if she's she is a real person, but I don't know her personally. But from the evidence, she had a pattern of saying, I've got this illness, I've got this, I'm having an operation and blah, blah, blah. So she knew that getting sympathy from others was a way of getting attention and a way of getting a community and a way of getting support, because I suppose she knew she needed some kind of platform in which to operate, as anyone does in a way, but maybe not through those means.
Well, given we live in a world where social influencing is now becoming a career prospect for young people, and I actually know a young person who wants to be, I know two young people who want to be influencers when they grow up, young males. And given we live in that world where that's an option, where being famous is something that you can manufacture, then it's unsurprising that that's something that she aspired to.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, in a way, she is a product of her time, and I suppose it's important to recognise that.
Yeah, and that time in particular, because Instagram was only just taking off, and her timing was actually really good in terms of having less noise. There was a lot less to compete with at that time.
That's true.
So, yeah.
Well, I think I just sort of mentioned, like, my reading of it wasn't that she was trying to be famous from the start, but that she wasn't coping. She was having panic attacks and realized physical illness, physical pain, and disability that you can see gets more attention than psychological, emotional pain. And then it's like a maladaptive coping. That's worked. That's how I get attention. Oh, and now also I can get famous doing this. And I've grown up not getting attention. Yes, please. Yummy.
Yeah, totally agree. So she clearly had a need for connection, like we all do, and she didn't have that. And I think there was a lot of positive reinforcement happening, because when she was talking about cancer and relating to people, she was getting the connection that she was craving and that she needed.
Yeah.
So I think that positive reinforcement was, perpetuating the behaviour. There wasn't much pushback from anybody because she didn't have strong connections to, I guess, hold her accountable in some ways.
I wonder if it could be a good point to shift into, firstly, loving it, loving this discussion. I wonder if we might shift into the health decision stuff. Erica, do you want to guide us on a bit of a journey of the things that came through strongly for you with that?
I think there were two main areas that struck me, and one was related to taking advantage, or I guess as an influencer, taking advantage of vulnerable people with cancer in particular, and being able to have a strong influence on those health decisions. What we know about that is that we've got push and pull factors when it comes to health decision making. So people get pulled towards a certain type of medicine. So in this case, in the case of Miller, it was an alternative medicine. And she was pulled towards that because it was perceived as being, healthier, natural, It was going to give her an option that she didn't have. And that was a little bit of a push factor as well, because she wasn't getting what she wanted from mainstream healthcare. So the other push factor that came across in that, the way they portrayed her healthcare interactions, was one of dismissing her and not really listening to her needs. And this is a very common experience for women. Women's healthcare concerns aren't really listened to. And in the context of the story, that was quite a significant decision that she had to make, to amputate an arm. So very emotional, very personal.
I just want to jump in there quickly, Erica, because the way it was represented in the series, the way Miller was represented in the series, she wasn't just a woman, she was a beautiful young woman. So aesthetics were really important in her representation. And the implication was she doesn't want to lose an arm because that would be aesthetically not very attractive. She didn't want to lose an arm we got the sense that she wanted to sustain this beauty and not this, losing an arm would sort of be a stain on that. So I think in a way, audiences were perhaps encouraged to judge her a bit. Like her health decisions wasn't necessarily all about health. It was about aesthetics too. Because she wanted to retain the integrity of her arm. And when she was doing her postings online were all about beauty. It wasn't just about I'm healthy and beautiful. And that's the allure. That's how she fostered, you kind of get a bigger audience if you're a sick beauty than if you're just sick. So that feeds into that gender issue.
You say encouraged. We were encouraged. I think we were incited.
Okay, all right.
Into disliking them, hating them.
Yeah.
The producers of the show were a bit amoral around the way they represented these young women. I'm pretty sure that they haven't done that objectively. I felt manipulated when I was watching it. Yeah, absolute manipulation. I definitely felt manipulated. And when I listened to other people talking about the show, they were incensed. They really couldn't bear it. She was so hideous,
You're talking about Belle or Miller?
Well, I think people were more sympathetic to Miller.
Yeah,
but I
she actually
still
had
think
cancer.
we were encouraged to judge her, as you said, or incited into judgment. It almost reminded me of witch burnings, Look at her, look what she's doing now. Oh, she's most definitely a witch. It seemed like that to me. And I felt a bit disgusted by it. So I was watching it and, I could see it. She was an influencer. She said she had cancer. She wrote recipes. She didn't have cancer. I was kind of less upset about that than I was about the way that the television show was made.
Yeah, but you've also got to take into account that she also befriended cancer sufferers. And that was represented where this young boy was dying and she promised all these things like, I'll pay for your surgery. And her alignments with these people was clearly manipulative, which she clearly did. And these people were waiting for her help. And of course, she didn't come through. She promised to give all these money to charities, looking like this extraordinary, generous person. And of course, that never happened either. So I think people do tend to judge when they feel that vulnerable people are preyed upon. I think,
yeah, you're right.
And I can understand that. I can see that, but I do agree there was an extra dimension of judgment where, particularly with Miller, I felt too, who actually did have cancer, where she was very beautiful, and you were encouraged to dismiss her as vain. As someone who didn't go through with the amputation, silly girl, she died.
Yeah, the doctors told us that. So they were one-dimensional characters.
Yeah.
that were being portrayed, I do think, as witches. We were supposed to want to persecute them and watch them suffer. I agree that she did do the wrong thing, particularly around that boy where she was supposed to give money and that child was dying.
Yeah. And also Miller's mother had cancer, and of course she had to follow through with the supposed alternative treatment that, and of course she died. So there's that sense that it goes beyond you. It goes beyond, you could say Belle was a narcissist. It goes beyond the narcissist and affects all these other people, and that's when it's obviously problematic. But I mean, I also I think it's also helpful to acknowledge that the series is also part of a social media machine. Because it knows it's got an audience, like a social media avatar. It knows it's got an audience who wants to vicariously view a young woman who's acted really, really badly. And so all of these trolls and, all these online, frenzy is kind of fostered. It is fostered by this Netflix series. It isn't trying to critique or to analyze, the social media phenomenon itself, which is a monster in and of itself, which enables all of this miscommunication and all of this injustice. But no. And also you think of big companies like Apple, who were aligned itself with Bell, so they were wanting to cash in on it. And of course, they separated themselves from her when they found out that it was a fiction. Her cancer was a fiction. But but there wasn't a critique of how these companies, are also monstrous in their own ways, and they prey upon people.
Parasites.
Yeah.
As was 60 Minutes.
So it's all, yes, that's true. And it's usually the individualized, let's get the individual. It's easier to get the individual than to get the big companies. And that's what usually happens.
And social media makes it possible, doesn't it?
It does,
totally
yeah.
makes it possible for these influencers to destroy people's lives. And we know that they're out there. We know the Andrew Tates absolutely use the social media to harness that. And what is the moral responsibility of the platforms? They take no responsibility at all for making sure that anybody who speaks through them is doing so authentically. They don't censor or moderate what anybody's saying. They're happy if somebody is clicking on something that will make them money. And people don't even realize that they are the product, that if they're clicking, then they're making money for those social media companies. I'm annoyed by that as well.
Yeah.
So I don't want to, I feel as though I'm almost minimizing what Belle did. But yeah, I feel like there's more to the story than just Belle Gibson was bad, Belle Gibson did a bad thing.
It's so easy to just hate her. That's the easiest thing to do. And I think social media can foster a parasocial love relationship, and it can foster a hate relationship. Like it really, again, it feeds off emotions all the time. It's not interested necessarily in truth if it gets in the way of a more compelling story.
It also manufactures those emotions that it can then feed off.
Yeah.
So that's morally poor as well, isn't it?
It's shocking, yeah. But it doesn't seem as sexy to be going after a corporation than an individual. Like we do live in a world where it is the cult of personality. It's the cult of individuals, so we can easily point the fingers to, which is, part of the problem. And it's also part of the reason Belle was so successful, because she fed into that.
I, on first watching, really enjoyed the series. I will openly say that. And I think it's at the individual level. I never hated Miller or Belle. I felt a lot of empathy for them, especially from a mental health perspective, and having managed a chronic illness in the past, feeling like totally overwhelmed in going or repeating a story or being told something that in a medical context where I didn't feel like my perspectives were being heard. But I found myself being really pissed off with a lot of the men in the series, imposing their perspective or what their needs were. And I was really pissed off at the publishing house with her book, because the way that story was told was like, oh, well, they didn't really know that this was all deceptive.
That's right, yeah.
And then right at the end of the series, of course, they'd done media prep with Belle and not only realised probably was she not someone who had a terminal illness, but also she probably mentally wasn't very well and had really negative childhood experiences. So this is like, at multiple points, it's like, at what point do we go, hey, are you okay? Do you need some supports? But it was always like a bit of a cash cow situation. Yeah. So it was interesting because when I reached out to folks and to other people, I'd hoped to have a publishing person to be the fifth person join us today. And people were saying to me, I can't even watch that show. It upsets me so much because I was a follower of Belle, or what trash, I turned it off in the first episode. And maybe folks in this room had said that to me as well. I can't exactly remember.
I remember. Yeah, I did turn it off. I didn't think it was very well made. I found it a bit confusing because it was shifting time periods between 2009 and 2015 or something, and it was just, to me, it wasn't very clear cut. And I kind of felt that it felt rushed for some reason. I just didn't think it really addressed her background all that well. It kind of revealed that, sure, she came from a dysfunctional family, but so do a lot of people. And yeah, I didn't find it compelling viewing, put it that way. And
sure.
That's the thing that draws me in. But when I heard from you, Jaz, I thought, oh, I better bloody watch it, watch all of it.
I was just going to say, I was like you, Jaz. I actually enjoyed it first watch. I was very, I didn't love a lot of what was done in the show, but as far as good TV goes, I actually, I thought they did a good job. But what I did find disturbing was at the end when they sort of talked about what happened to Belle, I think they said, just Google it. And I just thought, wow, like to leave it up in the air like that. And, you know, it was fictional, but based in truth.
They kept saying that, didn't they?
Yeah, fictional. And then saying just Google it. I just thought, you know, how do people make decisions about what they're going to read online when they Google it? I thought that was really unfair to Belle.
And what about the attack on the wellness industry? I think that a lot of people rely on the wellness industry because a naturopath or an acupuncturist will give you more time, is more interested in you as a holistic person, will give you many different treatments, including being able to refer you to psychologists or whatever if you need that. And yet this show really attacked the wellness industry as though the wellness industry or any kind of preventative health or healthcare that you might seek outside of a specialist was wrong. And I thought that was quite dangerous. And a lot of people, particularly in inequality studies, when we're looking at social class, one of the things that you do notice is that people from disadvantaged classes are unable to access preventative health and unable to access that wellness industry because it can be very expensive. And the outcome of that is poor morbidity. You know, people are sicker. They're sicker because they can't access it, and they die younger because they can't access it. So it's not just about being able to seek Medicare, and if you have a life-threatening illness, everybody gets the same kind of care, but it's this preventative care and it's access to the wellness industry that's really helpful for the middle and upper classes. So I don't think slamming the wellness industry was a good idea either. And maybe, Erica, you've got something to say about that?
I've got so much to say about it. I don't even know where to start. Part of the problem is that it's, I guess there's two things going on in the wellness industry. There's wellness influencers who have no medical training or, no healthcare training at all. And then there are serious health professionals like naturopaths, herbalists, who are still not part of our mainstream healthcare system. And this is kind of the crux of the problem, is that we've been fighting for regulation of these health professions for a long time now, and it still hasn't happened. They're still just sitting outside. And because of that lack of integration of care, as you've already highlighted, people don't have as many options for their healthcare. So if they do see, if they are stuck in the medical system, and this is in particular happens to women, they're not being heard by mainstream healthcare. They're not being listened to. They're being dismissed, or the treatment isn't working for them. If they don't have, there's an equity issue where if they don't have the funds to go and pay privately to see a naturopath or other complementary health practitioner, then they're missing out on that treatment. And that's actually something that is driving people online to do their own research and, engage in self-care. But being able to interpret the information out there is extremely difficult. So, people may not always be making the best decisions about those treatments. So we have a big equity issue here in terms of access to that kind of healthcare. And we do have evidence for a lot of treatments, but there also isn't enough funding available to increase that evidence base. So, there's a lot going on. It's quite a complex area. But, there's definitely an equity issue there.
And then for folks who don't know that evidence and don't have that kind of context of how the system works, is like, well, almost like all in, all out. Can I drink apple cider vinegar and it will cure me? Like, is that herbalism? Oh, like, what does the zodiac say? Like, this all lumping pseudoscience in with non-mainstream science, and that's a real risk.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we stopped using the word alternative, because what we know is that most people use herbal medicines, anything outside of mainstream healthcare, complementary to their mainstream healthcare. So they don't use it as an alternative. There are some people that do, but they're a very small minority. So we refer to it as complementary medicine rather than alternative medicine. But unfortunately, the story that they tell in apple cider vinegar is that Miller just dismisses mainstream healthcare completely and goes down the alternative route. That separation, like not having a healthcare team, not having, specialists speaking to other healthcare practitioners, becomes really problematic.
There is that third character, and I forget their name, but she meets Belle at the cafe. And at this point, I'm going to pause and say that cafe where they film is called Poke the Bear. It's in Northcote. It's one of my locals and favorites. It's a very nice place to go. Very inclusive place run by Ryan. Love your work, Ryan. So that was a bit fun for me, I think, when I was watching it, seeing Melbourne places that I knew. But there's that character where for her it becomes like a spiritual journey. And there's that critique, I guess, of Western folks going to various countries, paying for a spiritual experience, and how that is like a complete alternative as well, and not something that could be, at what point can we work in people's spiritual beliefs and spiritual experiences into mainstream medicine experiences as well?
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that we've become really disconnected from that spiritual aspect of healthcare. And like we know when we look at traditional medicines and how Indigenous cultures use medicine, they don't separate that spiritual aspect of health. It's part of how they treat the whole person. And we definitely, I think, need to address that in mainstream healthcare, that disconnect.
I did actually watch an interesting documentary about her that revealed that after she was exposed as a fraud, she sort of adapted and adopted a different community, and it was about she became Muslim and she was a part of an Ethiopian community trying to raise money for hungry children. And she was exposed as a fraud. But the thing is, what was interesting is that she needed to find another community to have a sense of belonging. And to me, that's quite sad. You know, I think one may always wonder what is the motivating factor in all of this. And sure, I might have mentioned fame or whatever, but I think, Jaz, you're right. I think she wanted to belong somewhere. I think she wanted to have connections, and she would go to any lengths. So yes, I sort of think compassion is something that is kind of rare nowadays, especially when online communications tend to be so kind of cruel and judgmental. So yes, I mean, sure, she did a really terrible thing, but I think at the heart of it, she's probably motivated by that need to be seen and that need to belong, and we all need that, you know. Clearly, she just hasn't gone about it the right way, just put it mildly. But yeah, that's. I mean, I was thinking of that. It is always easy to judge these sorts of characters, and I think that certain narratives kind of often encourage our judgment. But I'm pleased that you didn't feel that way, Jaz, when you watched the series. That you felt empathy for her. So,
well, I did. I wouldn't say that I was as cognizant of the things that you're raising, but I was aware that they're trying to portray her in a certain way.
yeah,
It just didn't land as well. I did feel that empathy for her, and all that stuff you've mentioned there, Suzie. All really great points in a context where production, the number of productions and of bioflicks or based on true stories, like the number of greenlit projects are going through the roof. Like, yeah, I just kind of think about. I do wonder about the ethics and the morality of that, the longer term impact on her. And I will come out and say that I had never even heard the story till the series. Yeah, I did my PhD on TV news, and I am infamous in my social network for being the person who doesn't know anything about current affairs because I do not pay any attention. So yeah, it raised the story for me for the first time.
Yeah, her appearance on 60 Minutes, they did dramatise that in the series, and in the documentary they did show that, and it obviously was a train wreck. She thought she could somehow redeem herself, but you know, yes. So she has, she's sort of quite well known in the media. I mean, even a Google search will, she is kind of known as a scammer, as a fraudster. So
it was the first thing that I watched when I finished the last episode. I found the YouTube clips from that interview on 60 Minutes and watched those. And they've just relaunched Talking About Your Gen. And one of the questions for the recent generation was about Belle Gibson. Like, as you said, I'm under a rock. This is a really important story that's impacted a lot of lives.
Yeah. And I think the court directed her to pay all these fines, which she hasn't paid. She can't pay them. That she can't afford them. And particularly sending money to the charities that she promised, which she never has. So yeah, she's got all these outstanding fines. Yeah.
The thing that really bugged me about the way they portrayed her as well was they really focused on her being hysterical. So they were sort of buying into this, perpetuating this trope that, women villains, are hysterical, or and they really hammed that up, and that's the one thing I really disliked. And I thought that scene where she threw herself on the floor, and that, I thought that made me feel so uncomfortable, because I really thought they only did that for dramatic effect, and so that you would dislike her even more. So they were just piling it on, And so I think that's the one thing, like, even though I enjoyed the show just purely as TV, like, a good watch, there were things like that really grated.
Again, worried for her safety. Like, because if that did happen and people, like, what does it mean to care for other humans in contemporary Australian society when that's happening? But there's no follow-up. And so most of my research is around gendered violence and intimate partner violence. And you certainly saw Belle's manipulation of her partner and using the relationship with her son, like as a basically comply or you'll lose access. And I think we don't often see that side of things. The part when I felt most unsafe and gross in the whole series was when she went to see that doctor for her son. Do you remember this guy just in a random building?
Yeah, he looked like a pedophile.
Yeah. And sends, she's clearly not well herself at the time. The boy goes in by himself first, and then she does, and you see genuinely how vulnerable she is. And she's not posting about the treatment she's getting from that guy. So she has some health concerns, even if it is, psychological in roots. You don't put yourself in that kind of situation and pay that amount of money behind closed doors for what that looks like. And again, it's like the normal character, that the woman who's working with her goes along to that and just it's like, at what point is it okay to intervene? I guess, like, I know we're not going to have an answer for that, but it made me feel uncomfortable how people were seeing in that series how unwell she was and risky situation she was in, and not really advocating or supporting.
They did portray the story as though everybody around her was a victim who could do nothing with her. And yet nobody spoke to her openly about it. Nobody sat her down. She needed an intervention, not somebody who eventually, after months and months and months and months or years or whatever it was, says, you're not sick. And it's hardly explored between the couple. And some people suspecting that she's not sick. It needed more than that. Something more real. And
I mean, I suppose it's difficult though, because with this series, has it represented itself as, have they introduced scenes that didn't exist in her life? Are they saying this is a loose portrayal of what happened, or are we trying to represent precisely what happened? So it's kind of difficult to know. I mean, I suppose the thing is we can only see the dramatisation and think that they probably did make decisions that may not have completely cohered with everything that she did, because they have to concentrate it within a certain amount of time. So there's always that gap, Donna, between maybe there was more people intervening in the real situation, but the dramatisation didn't pick it up. Like, we don't really know.
because the dramatisation was so manipulative, and that they did want to incite hatred of her.
I was pretty furious with her, I have to say. I was feeling frustrated because I know a lot of people who have cancer, who are struggling and who have died of cancer. And so I think maybe if it was anything other than that, dealing with cancer, I might have felt a little bit less angry. But because it dealt with such a serious illness, and when it is actually such a problem, so many people get cancer, and now people who were younger, that it is very, very serious. And I mean, I would just you would just hope that something good might come out of this. There could be some awareness, like some CEO could get Bell under his or her wing and just say, well, let's spread some awareness and some cancer intelligence here and actually help people and give them good information online.
I don't think I felt personal. Like it didn't feel personal to me in any way, because I was aware from the moment I started watching that I was being manipulated and that this portrayal was possibly untrue. So I'm not sure which parts are true and which aren't. So I'm not convinced by any of the wrongdoing that they've told us about, because I don't know what proportion to take that wrongdoing occurred in. I know that there was wrongdoing from the true story, but I haven't followed the court case. I'm not prepared to trust the people who produced the show. So I don't know. I don't know if that doctor that Jasmine talked about, I was pretty shocked by that. I thought he's a predator. He's milking her for money. He's doing nothing for that incredible amount of money. And I don't know if he's real. I don't know if he existed. I don't know if any of the relationships that I was shown are real. I don't know to what extent. I think that there was deception. That's clear from the outcomes of the court case. However, I also think outcomes of court cases can be wrong, particularly if a jury or a magistrate is feeling emotional about the crime. For instance, and this is highly irrelevant, but it reminds me, the pedestrian car accident in Hornsby the other day. Jasmine won't know about this because she knows. Oh, you do know about it?
No, I don't.
Oh, right,
Spot on.
right.
Good pick.
So somebody's stopped to let some pedestrians cross. Somebody else has hit that car in the back, and people are talking about it, and they're saying, well, that person's going to be in a lot of trouble. He's killed 2 people. So he's going to be in a lot of trouble. But then it was a 19-year-old from a very posh suburb in Sydney driving a BMW. And immediately people started to say, oh, he'll get off, right? He's going to get off. His father's probably a magistrate. Whereas our detention centres for youth are absolutely packed full of children from disadvantaged backgrounds, right? So juries, magistrates, etc. are socially influenced. So I don't necessarily trust the outcomes of the court case either. Isn't that bad? I am so cynical about the social world. Studying.
A lot of what happened, though, is also documented by journalists who work for good newspapers. So I tend to trust investigative journalism.
Yeah.
So that information about Bell is also filtered through that portal.
So if you could distill it all through the different places that you trust and say, well, what crimes did she commit? Then,
well, it's fraud. I mean,
yeah,
pretending something that you're not, and she made profit out of it, and it's just that's what it is.
And she told people she was raising money and didn't raise money.
She kept saying, or she did raise money, but she promised to send all the money to charities, which never happened. So that was advertised online.
I was just going to mention, folks, this could be a good place to mention that the series is, I'm just going to say loosely based, but we don't know for sure, on the 2017 book, The Woman Who Fooled the World by journalists Bo Donnelly and Nick Toscano.
Okay.
So folks are interested, might want to have a read of that. And yeah, I think like somebody mentioned, if you Google it, you're going to find lots of commentary on this series and opinion pieces on Bell more broadly. And I made a real effort to not read that stuff, to not influence what my take was, and then have that, what are the things that interested me, and then pick the brains of you folks in this conversation. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. I want to make sure, though, that we don't finish up without somebody, like with anybody thinking, I just want to make this point before we finish up. Was there anything else that we should loop out?
I did just want to come back to something, and that was just, I guess, ethically, how do we deal with these kind of shows where we've got somebody who's a real person who's sure they've committed a crime, but all of this embellishment around her story and not being able to know what's true, what's fiction, is it okay, ethically to produce these shows about people while they're still alive, is that okay? Like, how does that sit with us? I'm kind of not comfortable with it. Like, yeah, it's just sitting uncomfortably with me.
Knowing what we know about human memory, of they can say as much as they want of this is only partly true. Folks will, like Suzie was saying early on, folks will watch this and take parts of it to be true that aren't, and vice versa. Yeah, I think it's pretty problematic. I think the only thing I read was Belle received no payment, and that was because the people creating the show didn't want to look like they're supporting or promoting her. And it's like, well, you can't have it both ways, folks. You can't make money off doing a show on someone but then not reimburse them, or like, I don't know. I don't have a well thought out opinion on that, but I guess I don't know what the answer is, but I also feel really uncomfortable about it, Erica.
Yeah, and I think it's also, what's the impact on her now? What impact did that have on her, that betrayal?
Yeah.
Especially being, what we know, she seemed to be quite mentally unwell.
Representations of yourself, even when you step into them voluntarily, like we have with recording this. Every time I record an episode, I feel anxious straight away afterwards. Donna and I recorded something the other day. I was like, what did I even say? How am I going to come across? This is like the 30th episode of Psych Attack. And having representations of yourself in the public and not knowing how people will perceive you is pretty uncomfortable. And then imagine that's you. You don't get to tell your part of the story, but you get represented for, like, basically what we've discussed is all the warts, right? Like all the most awful things and the worst decisions that she ever made. It's pretty awful.
It's really tough. I mean, I think, how we sort of think certain people are fair game? How they have this thing in the media where, say, if you're a royal, it's fair game, like to expect yourself to be in public. I'm not saying that Belle is fair game at all. But what you just said, Erica, is thought-provoking, because I was just thinking of all the things that we access online, all the documentaries and series and stuff. A lot of that is based on the lives of real people. So if we put a ban on representing the lives of real people, you sort of think, well, what would be the criteria to not represent that? What should stop it? Is it the ethical dilemma of Belle coping in real life and having the stigma? But the thing is, it's already out there, like the genie's out of the bottle in a way. I'm not saying I agree, but she did put it out there by performing a certain role online, and so she, whatever would happen, the fact that a crime is committed, it is always going to be a public thing. So I'm just a few thoughts anyway.
Yeah, I think the difference for me is, like, a documentary is one thing,
yeah,
where you can fact check that and all the rest of it, but it's more the saying it's, kind of based in the truth, but, it's not all real, it's partly fiction, and not knowing what the fiction is and portraying her in a particular way that may not be true. That's the dilemma I have, is the way they're portraying her in this particular show. And the other one is, I think, Monsters, which is about the serial killers.
That's right, yeah.
Not the serial killers, the two boys that
the two
killed
brothers
their parents.
who killed their parents, yeah. But because of that series, there's been a groundswell of people wanting to get them out of prison, because they've seen the psychological underpinnings of why they did that crime. So their case has come to light, and people are rethinking, well, should they be let out of prison early? Because of that. I mean, that's how influential a series is. It's extraordinary.
Should they be let out? I haven't watched it. I saw it advertised.
All these celebrities are supporting them to be let out because they said that they were abused as children and they had a psychological reason for doing what they did. And
won't stop them doing it again, though, will it?
no, no, they shot their mother and father.
Yeah.
Everyone thought they did it for their fortune. They were seriously wealthy. But this series has gone beyond they only did it for their fortune. It went into the actual relationships, which could also be false. I mean, who knows, Erica? I mean,
yeah, that's
this
right.
is the thing.
Yeah. That's it. That's the thing. We don't know.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a clever? I mean, there's rules about when these things can be released, but you just don't in terms of court cases and appeals and things. But yeah, it does. It makes you wonder about the agenda of things being put together. Yeah,
that's true.
Which feels like a very nice loop to roughly where we started. I think we should loop out there, folks. I think we could probably, after some kind of bio break of taking a bit of comfort and coming back, we probably could talk for a few more hours. But I just want to thank each of you for joining me on this. This is, for me, a little bit experimental to see how this would go and try this as a format. And I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot from each of you. And I also just want to thank you for modeling kind discussion on what is tricky topics, because I think that's another issue that we see in the media and social media more broadly, is people not having discussions and hearing sides of different perspectives. So Suzie, Erica, Donna, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jaz.
Yeah, thank you, Jaz.
Thanks for having us, Jaz.